Day 3, 7 p.m. Jenny sat at the dinner table with her loving parents, enjoying a delicious meal that her mother had spontaneously prepared. They laughed and chatted, enjoying each other's company, but as Jenny glanced at the watch on her wrist, her smile faded. The alarm had gone off, and she knew what that meant. It was already 7:30 p.m., time for her to lock herself in her room. She excused herself from the table, saying she had some homework to finish. As she made her way up the stairs, she felt her heart pounding in her chest. This was the third day in a row that she had to do this, and she still didn't know what was going on. She reached her room and locked the door, then pushed a chair up against the handle for extra security. She sat down on her bed and tried to calm her nerves, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. At exactly 7:44 p.m., the sun set, and that's when the screaming began. It was a chorus of voices, rising up from the town below. Some were close, and Jenny could hear the terror in their cries. Others were distant, but no less haunting. Jenny crawled under her bed and covered her ears, trying to block out the sounds. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew it wasn't good. She then heard the doorknob being twisted violently, like someone trying to open the locked door. Suddenly, she heard a loud banging on her door. She could hear her father shouting, "Open the door, you little bitch." Jenny's heart raced as she realized that they weren't themselves again. She heard more banging and screaming from outside her room, and tears streamed down her face as she realized she was completely trapped. She was alone, and whatever was happening to her parents was happening to the rest of the town too. Jenny's mind was flooded with the terrifying memories of the first day when all these unsettling events had started unfolding. Day 1, 7 p.m. They were having dinner as usual, when her parents suddenly began to convulse uncontrollably, their bodies jerking and stiffening as if they were having seizures. She watched in terror as black smoke entered their bodies through their mouth and nose, writhing and twisting inside them like a living creature. Their veins began to darken and spread, the blackness crawling over their skin until it reached their necks. And then, with a sickening lurch, their eyes turned pitch black, staring out at her with a chilling emptiness. Jenny was frozen with fear as she watched her mother slowly rise from her chair, the legs creaking against the floor. The black veins wreathed and twisted beneath her skin as she turned and began to shuffle towards the kitchen, moving with a strange, jerky gait that made Jenny's skin crawl. Meanwhile, her father stood up and began to take off his belt, a twisted smile spreading across his face as he turned his empty, black eyes towards her. "Give me your hands," he hissed, his voice thick with an evil that she had never heard before. Her mother began to select a knife from her collection, and Jenny knew that something was terribly wrong. With trembling hands, she tried to leave the dining room for her room. But her father caught her and attempted to tie her hands while her mother giggled ominously, approaching with the knife in her hand. Jenny struggled and managed to break free, racing up the stairs and locking herself in her room. But she could hear the footsteps of her parents as they approached her door. "Open the door, Jenny," her mother said in a gentle voice. "We won't hurt you, trust us," her father added, trying to reassure her. But Jenny knew better than to believe them. She shouted back, "No, what's wrong with you both?" Suddenly, a loud scream came from outside her window, sounding like it was coming from Timmy, a classmate of hers. Her heart raced as she realized that whatever was happening to her parents might be happening to others in the town as well. Jenny looked out the window from her room and was horrified to see both Timmy's parents outside their house, stabbing Timmy repeatedly. Timmy's screams of agony continued until they were suddenly silenced. Jenny clamped her hands over her mouth to prevent herself from screaming. She realized that Timmy must have tried to run but was caught by her parents. Jenny watched as Timmy's lifeless body was dragged into the house, leaving a trail of blood behind. The banging on the door grew louder, and Jenny's mother's screams pierced through the walls, "Let us in." Jenny was lost and panicked, but she knew she had to make sure her parents couldn't break in. She dragged a chair over and wedged it under the doorknob. Returning to the window, she saw Timmy's mother cleaning up the blood with cloths and detergents. Jenny tried calling the police, but the line was dead. She attempted to use the laptop, but there was no internet connection. She realized she was cut off from everyone and everything. She then curled up in a corner of the room and stared at her door, trembling with fear. Day 2, 9 a.m. Jenny woke up to the rays of the sun shining on her face. She wasn't sure how long she had been asleep, but the banging and twisting of the doorknob had stopped. She pressed her ear against the door to listen for any sounds outside but heard nothing. Slowly, she removed the chair and opened the door. When she saw her parents in the kitchen, she was shocked. They both looked normal, without the black veins and pitch-black eyes. "Good morning, dear," her mother exclaimed. "You're going to be late for school. Come have your breakfast." "What are you waiting for? I made your favorite waffles," her mother said. Puzzled by what had happened the night before, Jenny slowly made her way to the dining table. After breakfast, she went back to her room to get ready for school. She decided to check on Timmy and rode her bike to his house, as they usually cycled to school together. Much to her surprise, she found no blood on the floor, but the scent of bleach was overpowering. Then, the door suddenly opened and Timmy's mother appeared. Jenny was stunned for a moment. "Hi, Mrs. Henderson, is Timmy ready for school?" she asked politely. Mrs. Henderson looked puzzled. "Timmy? Who is Timmy?" Jenny replied, "Your son, Timmy. We go to school together." Mrs. Henderson continued to look puzzled. "I'm sorry, dear, you must be mistaken. We have never had any children before." Taken aback by the response, Jenny had no choice but to leave. She realized she was going to be late for school and cycled alone to school. Jenny was greeted by her best friend Grace at school. She had been away at her granny's house outside town and was only back to school this morning. Grace was shocked to hear about what had happened to Timmy. Jenny confirms with her that the strange occurrences are only happening in their town. During class, Jenny notices that a few other classmates are missing besides Timmy. At lunchtime, Grace shares with Jenny that her dad, who works as a construction worker on the new playground project, was hurt in an accident yesterday. Something exploded and injured a few workers on site. Jenny is curious but doesn't press Grace for more information. The school day ends at 6 p.m., and Jenny cycles home. Her parents greet her and announce that dinner is ready. It's her favorite spaghetti, and everyone seems to be in a good mood. However, at 7:44 p.m., the same time as yesterday, her parents suddenly start having seizures. Jenny remembers what happened yesterday and quickly dashes to her room. She locks the door and hides there for the entire night. The phone and internet are still not working. She hears screams from close and far in the town again and is confused about what is happening. Suddenly, the doorknob starts to twist, and she hears her mother's sweet voice calling for her. "Sweetie, can you come help Mummy do the dishes? Mummy is tired." Then the knocking on the door started. "Sweetie, are you there?" Jenny's mum asked. The doorknob twists violently, and her mother starts to growl, demanding that Jenny open the door. The banging and screaming begin again, just like yesterday. Jenny is terrified and doesn't know what to do. She just curled up in the corner of the room in fear till all the disturbance subsided. Day 3, 9 a.m. Jenny woke up tired and still feeling anxious from the events of the previous night. Her parents seemed oblivious to what had happened, and they acted as if everything was normal. Jenny decided to skip breakfast and head straight to school. When she arrived, she was surprised to find that Grace was absent, along with several other students. Even the teachers didn't seem to recall all of the missing students. Jenny tried to call Grace, but the phone lines were still down, and there was no internet connection. Feeling worried, Jenny decided to ride her bike to Grace's house after school. However, when she arrived, there was no answer at the door, no matter how hard she knocked. She began to feel more anxious as she had no idea where Grace could be. In desperation, she decided to ride to the new playground that the town was building. hoping to find her dad, who worked as a construction worker there. But when she arrived, she found the construction site abandoned and the work halted. As she looked around the area, she noticed something strange: a large hole in the ground with a broken tomb-like door, as if something had exploded. She shuddered at the sight and wondered what could have caused it. Jenny checked the time and realized it was almost 7 p.m. She knew she needed to get home before the sunset. She hopped on her bike and pedaled quickly back to her house, feeling more confused and worried than ever before. Back to day 3, 11 p.m. Present time. Jenny was startled by a loud bang, which made her snap back to the present moment. It sounded like someone was stabbing the door with a knife. She quickly crawled out from under the bed and grabbed a baseball bat, ready to fight for her life if the door was broken down. Luckily, the door held off the stabs, but the attackers were desperate to get in. She could hear scratching on the door that sounded like her mother's fingernails. The attack went on for a very long time. Exhausted from the previous 2 days, Jenny eventually fell asleep for a while. Day 4, 6:35 a.m. She woke up to the first rays of sunlight and decided to leave town. She packed whatever she could in her backpack and opened the door. She was shocked to see that the wooden door had a lot of marks on it, and the scariest part was the nails that were stuck on the door with blood trailing along them. Jenny sneaked out of the house without even looking for her parents. She headed to school one last time to see her best friend Grace and to see if she would turn up today. As she cycled to the school, the streets were deserted, and the atmosphere was eerie. Upon reaching the school, Jenny was shocked to find that less than 10 students turned up for the assembly. This is the only high school in town, and almost all the teens studied here. It is also weird that the principal and teachers had no idea who the missing students were. It was like they had never been to the school before. Disappointed that she didn't see Grace, Jenny tried to leave the school, but was stopped by the headmaster. "Young girl, where are you going? Get back to class before it starts," he shouted. Jenny didn't fight back, as she didn't know whether these adults were sane or insane. The headmaster led Jenny back to class and had her attend it. Finally, school ended, and Jenny grabbed her bag and left without hesitation. She was on her bike, frantically pedaling towards the town exit, which was quite a distance. Knowing that she had to make it out of town, she didn't stop and kept riding. Finally, she saw the edge of the town, and the alarm on her watch went off. It was 7:30 p.m. She had exactly 14 minutes before the sun would set and darkness would engulf the area. As she got closer to the exit, she was shocked to see that the road was blocked by the army. They had set up a checkpoint, complete with barbed wire, sandbags, and armed soldiers. Before she could even reach the checkpoint, she was stopped by a voice projected through a loudspeaker. "This area is under quarantine. No one is supposed to leave. Please turn back to where you came from." Jenny couldn't believe what she was hearing. She tried to ride her bike a bit further forward, but she heard a shot fired. "You have been warned. You will be shot if you approach any further," the voice from the loudspeaker said. Jenny was lost and started to panic. Why was the army quarantining this town? What was happening? While she was lost in her thoughts, she heard a honk from not far away. She turned and saw her parents driving towards her in their car. Her father stopped the car before her, and both of them got out of it. "My dear, you did not come home after school, and we have been looking everywhere for you. We are so worried," Jenny's mum said. "Come home with us. Dinner is getting cold." Jenny had no choice but to listen to her parents. She reluctantly got into the car, still overwhelmed by everything that was happening and lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, on the way home, her watch alarm went off, indicating that it was now 7:44 p.m.